No, I don't currently support the removal of the blood quantum requirement for public office. I feel that we currently do not have a need for change because we have those who are interested in serving our citizens. However, in the future, it may be the case that it has to be changed to find viable candidates.
I support the people's right to decide the issue. I think that it is overdue for the people to have their say in the matter. I think that it has been this issue that, for whatever reason, elected officials have not wanted to confront. My personal belief is that it is not necessarily in the best interest of the current National Council seats, or the chief for that matter. If we did away with the blood quantum, it would open up the candidate field. The reason I say that it's not in the best interest of the National Council, take the at-large voting, for instance. Previously, you only voted for people in your own district. That was changed to where you have to campaign the whole nation. That's not in the interest of the candidate because it's more expensive and it takes more time to get elected. That issue has been on the ballot 3 times, but has yet to be overturned. So I don't think it's as important what I personally feel if it should be a blood quantum requirement or not, but I do support and pledge that I would give the voters an opportunity to decide the matter.
The question is removing the blood quantum requirement for the Muskogee Creek Nation public office. I'm not of the opinion that I can take a position on this particular question. I am running for this office, not been elected yet, and I feel that I would need to seek some input regarding how the district and how the citizens in that area, in the Creek District, feel about this particular topic and subject. I would certainly want some input from those citizens in that area. So I don't believe that I can respond to this question in terms of one way or the other. If elected, I will certainly have to and will be glad to take the oath to support the Constitution, those things that are currently in place.
I believe over the years, transparency has been improving. I think that our citizens deserve to know what their government is investing in, how much is being made from those investments, and how the proceeds are being used to benefit our citizens and our tribal communities. The real question is, what do our people need so they can feel there is transparency?
I think overall, this particular council has been very non-transparent in all meetings and all matters. The reason I say that is we've had far too many extraordinary and emergency sessions where sometimes meetings happen, legislation is passed, financial decisions are made before the people overall even knew that a meeting was being held. So I think that the best way to address this would be through the policies and procedures of the National Council, maybe even adding to the codes of the National Council to require it by law that all meetings be publicly recorded, publicly, online archived for the citizens to be able to be a part of that process, to see the legislation before the meeting, to be able to formulate questions to ask their representatives, to see the discussion that happens at these meetings, and for it to be archived and readily available for the citizens. Then it's up to the citizens whether or not they participate in that forum, in that platform.
Improving the financial transparency of investments by the nation, I believe, is a rather easy one in terms of that information is available. I know that the controller and those individuals that monitor those investments, that they have that information. I think it's just merely a case where we would need to provide that and put that up either on a quarterly basis, which might be a minimum, but that could be done very easily, either added to the quarterly report and identified clearly so citizens can see and know where those dollars are invested, not just the permanent fund, but other funds as well. And so it would be my plan, in fact it is a platform of mine, to be able to seek some accountability as well as transparency in the financial situations of the district. So you might also add that to the web. and make it available. There shouldn't be any secrets on those particular items.
Currently, the chiefs and the council attend meetings with our at-large citizens. Possibly the use of teleconference for special quarterly meetings and interactions for at-large citizens with our leaders would be an idea. We also have a special liaison that interacts with our at-large citizens and our council members.
I think transparency and availability to all people, whether you live in this district or whether you live in jurisdiction or not, is important. The reason I say this, not that I lived out of boundaries. I lived out of boundaries for about 12 or 13 years before I moved back to Oklahoma in 2002. I know what it feels like to live out of boundaries. I know sometimes we feel neglected as at-large citizens, that maybe we're not as important. But the danger in differentiating between people who live in the jurisdiction and at-large is that when we label people in this manner, it gives us permission to maybe treat them differently. I think we have an accountability to increase communication with all people, not just people who live out of the boundaries. People who live here in jurisdiction, communication's still an issue. People are busy, you have lives, you have children, you have meetings, committees maybe you go to, you're part of your church or your grounds. People are busy, so they want more transparency. I think that opening up communication via social media, recording every single meeting that the National Council has, record all committee meetings, record all working meetings, record all general sessions like they are now, live stream those and then archive them for people to be a part of that so that they know everything that's going on. We're bound by the Public Meetings Act, which is fine for the people that show up, but with today's technology, we have a higher accountability and more resources to be able to be more transparent for the people. So I think communication could increase with everyone, not just at-large citizens.
My plan to increase the communications with at-large citizens would be, we currently have a department or a position that manages that. I believe that we would need to increase potentially the employees in that particular department so we could increase the number of contacts as well as potential meetings with those at-large citizens so that there would be some accountability there and we could show that we definitely are making an effort to communicate in a larger format. I believe that we could also schedule, that particular department schedule regional meetings more often to make sure that questions are answered and those individuals at large have the information that they're seeking from the nation, whatever that subject matter may be.
As a combat veteran, I fought to make sure the press doesn't have a muzzle on its mouth. I will absolutely support the Muskogee media as a constitutional agency, period.
Free press. So this particular situation that we have with really, in actuality, even though the legislation that ended up being passed implies we have a free press here at Muskogee Creek Nation, we do not. They are very much at risk and under attack by elected officials here and controlled by the elected officials currently, the current regime, if you may. So I do feel that people, they have a U.S. constitutional right to a free press. Our Muskogee Creek Nation Muskogee Creek Nation Constitution actually specifically says we cannot deny our people any U.S. constitutional right. We've denied our people the right to a free press. 100%, absolutely, this should be a constitutional question that should go to the people as a vote. If the people decide they don't want a free press, I mean, we'll have to live with it. But it should be answered by the people because it is a U.S. constitutional right. So I would commit to that. I would commit to putting my name or my efforts towards legislation to make sure that the free press question goes to the people, and if ratified by the people, creating new legislation to have a free press that is finally free from governmental influence like we have now.
Allowing citizens to vote on a constitutional amendment for the free press. My statement would be that first, I am of the opinion that the last legislation that was passed on this particular subject matter, I thought, granted the free press and took that group back out and allowed them to have their board members. I know there was some back and forth in that legislation and some discussions and some agreements made, but I'm of the opinion that that's what occurred, that they were taken out and they were given that free press status. Now, that may be defined by others vastly different than what I'm referring to. But secondly, with regard to this question, I'm of the opinion that if there would be a constitutional amendment via a referendum or a initiative petition of some nature, and that was brought forth with sufficient signatures to the proper entities in the nation, then I believe that if elected, I would support that particular vote.
No, I believe a citizen of our tribe should be Creek by blood. This is a very complex question that the federal government is reviewing. However, I feel as a sovereign nation, we should get to determine who our citizens are.
So the issue of freedmen descendants being enrolled in the Muskogee Creek Nation, I would be willing to let the people decide that. I don't feel that it is something that only the elected officials can decide. I think that the people, our Constitution actually gives our Muskogee people more say, more influence over every aspect of our government. You can vote for every single district. We have the right to petition. We have the right to introduce legislation, as a citizen just demonstrated with this, with the doing away from the blood quantum. The citizen drafted legislation, sent it to the chief's office, and it went over to the council, which nobody picked it up to sponsor it so that the people could vote on it. But it is your right to introduce legislation to the National Council. So I would be willing to let this issue go to the people at large and have the people decide, rather than just have, you know, a limited number. You would have the National Council, of course, we would get advice from the administration and the cabinet members, but you're talking about a decision that would be made by 30 people or less, whereas the people at large could actually decide the matter once and for all.
The last question is the position on the admittance of freemen descendants into the Muskogee Creek Nation. And as I understand, currently there is a litigation pending, and I think a federal court. I've not researched that heavily, but I believe that it would be improper for me as a candidate and as an employee to comment on what would be my position. We've been instructed that that's an AG question, and so we've been referring those to the Attorney General when those come up regarding this particular issue, as it is currently in litigation.